Welcome to my channel Techify with Adil. So today in this video we will be discussing about manage Microsoft Entra Identities. So this will be our next section. So examine role-based access control RBAC and user roles in Microsoft Entra ID. So Microsoft Entra ID has SaaS operational model and lacks support for computer objects and management capabilities via group policy settings. So this one we already know that the Microsoft Entra ID don't have this GPO capability. So therefore the delegation models with the Microsoft Entra ID is considered simpler than the same model in ADDS. So there are several built-in roles in all three tiers, including global administrator, billing administrator, service administrator, user administrator, and password administrator. So these are the built-in roles available in Entra ID. So each role provides different levels of directory-wide permission to its objects. By default, the account administrator of the subscription hosting the Microsoft Entra instance is assigned as the global administrator with full permission to all objects in their directory instance. So this is an important thing to remember. So by default, account administrator will be the global administrator. So global administrator means it has full permission to all objects in their directory instance. The service administrator, however, has more limited permissions and isn't the same as the global administrator by default. In Microsoft Entra ID, using the delegation model, you can delegate permissions to applications, allowing them to act on behalf of users and groups. The depth and breadth of these delegation capabilities vary based on Microsoft Entra edition. With Microsoft Entra ID free, that's a free tier, you can assign applications to both users and groups. With Entra ID P1 edition enhances this by offering more advanced assignment capabilities such as dynamic group membership based on user attributes. So we can have dynamic groups. So the users in that will be based on the attributes. The users will vary in the group. So for the Entra ID free, you're going to apply to a user or to a static group. So the P2 edition builds upon this by introducing features like self-service group management, where users can create and manage their own groups, and privileged identity management PIM, which is part of the suite of identity governance tools, allowing users to elevate their privileges temporarily. Microsoft Entra users can access Microsoft Entra applications by using the web-based portal referred as My Apps. So https myapps.microsoft.com. This portal automatically presents to the users all applications for which they have permissions. Another benefit of using this approach is the support for SSO, single sign-on, when starting an application, individual application from its interference. Authentication happens automatically once users sign into the portal. So once the user sign in, the authentication happens automatically with the help of SSO support. So Azure delegation model and role-based access control. So the delegation model applies to the graphical interface that is available in the Azure portal. So Azure portal offers a much more flexible and precise way of restricting management of Azure resources by implementing RBAC. So the delegation model is based on the graphic interface that is available in the Azure portal. The RBAC is more, the role-based access control is more precise of restricting the management of Azure by the implementing of this RBAC. So it will, based on our implementation, it is very flexible and precise. This mechanism relies on three built-in roles: owner, contributor, and reader. Each of these roles performs a specific set of actions on Azure resources that are exposed via the Azure portal, resources such as websites or SQL databases. You can grant intended access by associating a Microsoft Entra object such as a user, group, or service principal with a role and resource that appears in the Azure portal. Microsoft Entra ID doesn't include the OU class, which means that you cannot arrange its objects in the hierarchical of custom containers, which frequently are used in the on-premises ADDS deployments. This isn't a significant shortcoming because OUs in the ADDS are used primarily for GPO scoping and delegation. Since we don't have this GPO thing in our Entra ID, so the OU doesn't make a not having the OU doesn't make a big difference. And instead of delegation, we have this role-based access control. So instead, you can accomplish equivalent arrangements by objects, organization objects based on their attribute values and group membership. User roles in Microsoft Entra ID. So you can use three types of accounts in Microsoft Entra IDs: an organization account that the tenant administrator or co-administrator creates within the default Azure directory or any custom Azure directory. For example, user at domain 1 on Microsoft.com. An account that references an organizational account you create in Microsoft Entra instances, like user 2 at domain on Microsoft.com. Then the third type is an account that references a Microsoft account, like outlook.com.sg, so on. So you can use the tenant administrator account to sign up for a new trial or paid subscription, tenant administrator's account. This account can be a Microsoft account or an existing organizational account. To avoid mixing authentication methods, we recommend that you use organizational account to manage your Microsoft Entra tenant. You can only manage Microsoft Entra ID if you are a global administrator of the Microsoft Entra instance. You can only sign in to the Azure portal if you are the tenant administrator or if the tenant administrator has configured an organizational account to be a co-administrator. So meaning you can only sign in to the Azure portal if you are a tenant administrator. So you should be a tenant administrator to log into a Azure portal, or if the tenant administrator who's another account, that tenant administrator has configured an organizational account to be a co-administrator, like his backup. Only in those two cases you will be able to sign into Azure portal. So here are some of the built-in roles and their permissions. So first is global administrator. This role has access to all administrative features and settings. When you sign up for the Azure subscription, you become a global administrator. Only this role can assign administrative roles to other accounts. When you sign up to the Azure subscription, you become the global administrator by default. So limited administrator, when you select the limited administrator role for the user, you can then select one or more of the following administrative roles. So he is not a global administrator, he has a certain administrative privileges, like password administrator can reset passwords for users and manage service requests. Service administrator can manage services requests. Billing administrator can manage the billing information. Exchange administrator can manage exchange online settings. Skype for business administrator. Then user administrator. Then SharePoint administrator can manage SharePoint online settings. Compliance administrator can manage compliance settings. Security reader for security settings, to read the security settings. Security administrator can manage the security settings. Privileged role administrator can manage privileged roles. Intune administrator can manage the Intune settings. Guest inviter can invite guest users to the organization. Conditional access administrator can manage conditional access settings. User, this is a default role that doesn't provide any administrative rights. So normally you create any account as a normal basic user who doesn't have any kind of administrative or any kind of privileged access.